And then I gave you this quotation from late President Kennedy: those who make peaceful change through the ballot box impossible make violent change possible. All these things are compounding the problem that Africa is facing. So my suggestion throughout is that, look here, let's do the right thing. We cannot continue to be under the screensaver, pretending as if things are okay. Let us now push and compare our governments, or AU, and if possible, even up to the UN, that we should now begin to declare any form of unconstitutional change of government to be a crime against humanity. And that is something a lot of us are unwilling. I've been pushing this idea for the past 10 years, and I always sneak it in any chance I get, and I insist that let's do it. I was at a conference in Boston 6 years ago, or 4 years ago, and I brought this idea. And interestingly, I was in a taxi to the conference, and the guy who was driving me happened to come from Liberia. You know, I was seated at the back of my daughter, and we were sharing this idea. He turned to us and said, "Sir, this idea that you are saying, I think it's a good idea if we can push it. If this taxi driver is suggesting you should do so, what about us? Because if these people can parade around the continent, believing that whatever they did is justified, and sooner or later they become other statesmen and recognized, then what prevents the other one also repeating it? Because at the end of the day, the end will justify the means. And it's continuing throughout the continent. And I'm pleading with the academics, particularly all the so-called opinion leaders, including the business community, that it's about time that we sensitize our governments to come to recognize that Africa can never progress so long as we continue to shield the undemocratic leaders on this continent, those who have brought so much havoc to this continent, because as soon as he leaves one country, he goes to another, and he's giving safe haven, and it is not helping us. And I believe that it's about time that they are also penalized for all the wrong that they have committed against the continent. Let's look at a simple scenario. Those who are, we heard about plagiarization not too long ago. What happens if a student is discovered to have cheated in the exam? Even after 10 years, we will withdraw his results or her results, isn't it? But when it comes to political crime, for us it's okay. We pretend as if nothing has happened. No, they have caused more serious harm to this continent than anybody else. If a person steals and we get him, we penalize him. If he commits murder, we penalize. What about those who are stealing power? For them, it's okay. No, I have a problem with that. So I have suggested that at the end of the conference, we can pass a resolution. We did that with South some years ago. I continue to push for such resolutions. The one we did in 1999 in Zambia, we took it to the UN. It was circulated among the African countries, and as now most of them were angry about those resolutions. But I think we must compel them to come to the realization that this thing, this practice must stop. Otherwise, Africa will never have its way. So if we can take you quickly to the slide which deals with the resolutions, then you see what I've suggested. At the end of the day, it's up to us if we are interested. And you know why we are not succeeding? Because most of the time you find these leaders within the AU, and they themselves are the ones who will resist because they are already there. And they are the ones who are saying that unconstitutional governments cannot come in. But in the meantime, you are not clean and you are inside. Jammeh in the Gambia, Museveni in Uganda, many others, they are within the AU. But at the same time, you are blocking the door. What I'm suggesting is that let's get rid of them first. Anyone who is there unconstitutional must leave the scene. Then we can have a clean slate, and we start from there. Gaddafi cannot be in power and wants to be the head of African state. That's ridiculous, isn't it? Yes. Anyway, so, and then, take the case of my own country. Rawlings, for almost 20 years, decided to be in power. Now he runs around the law claiming to be a Democrat. Ridiculous. Either you are unclean or you are clean. Yes. So please, ladies and gentlemen, let me quickly take you to the resolutions, and then I'll stop there since the chairperson is ruthless with her time. Yes. Well, anyway, this gadget, I think I'll learn to use it. Good. Under the conclusions, then I had the good call for resolution. A passionate request for a resolution of the members present to be presented to AU. Among other things, you should read. We, the members present at the conference, on building a better life for all in this continent. How can we build a better life when others are just unprepared to be part of the leveling of the playing field? Heard at the University of Stellenbosch. It wasn't Stellenbosch, isn't it? But anyway, you organize it. Having noted the following worrying trends that exist on our continent, unconstitutional and undemocratic government based on one-party state, military dictatorship, lack of popular participation, prolong the third termers, isn't it? Entrenched and illegitimate positions in power have brought untold sufferings to the peoples of Africa. Lack of democratic governance in Africa seriously undermines the legitimacy of government and state institutions. Divisive rule on the basis of the promotion of ethnic divisions and the pursuit of party and self-interest instead of unity and reconciliation is not conducive to democratic governance. Military interventions and the entrenchment and perpetuation of military regimes stifle the development of democratic structures and good governance. Opposition political parties and other civil society groups in Africa are not allowed a level playing field to participate in government. Public accountability, ethical behavior, and transparency in government is woefully lacking in many parts of Africa. The lack of public accountability and the transparency in Africa breeds irresponsibility among public officials. Corruption on a massive scale has pervaded every sphere of African society and has seriously distorted the socio-economic, political, cultural, and other aspects of life in Africa. The entrenchment of corruption is a function of the lack or the misapplication of ethical principles, behavior, and leadership. Corruption has a negative impact on sustainability, economic growth, development in Africa. Corruption stifles private initiative and enterprise, distorts economic efficiency, leads to capital flight and brain drain, and hinders foreign investment in Africa. Corruption in Africa affects political stability and so forth. We have heard that corruption is not solely derived from internal political management, but also from the U.S. and other practices coming from the donor agencies. Having accordingly resolved that, African governments should steadfastly promote democratic governance, ethical behavior, public accountability to control corruption, and more specifically that there is a compelling need to develop and implement training strategies to inculcate ethical behavior and codes of conduct in public servants and citizens with a view to achieving highest integrity, the recognition of rule of law and blah, blah, and so forth, in order to deter any military adventurism on the continent. Any person who uses violence or unconstitutional means to overthrow any legitimate civilian government should be debarred from ever holding public office, and such persons should be pursued, prosecuted, and punished for the treasonable conduct without reference to any statute of limitation. So even for the next 50 years, we'll be hunting you. The offense shall be incorporated into domestic laws of all African countries and shall be adopted within the United Nations, and so forth. And then